hear stories and opinions from people who have experienced the supernatural. Then tune into Supernatural Limits, the podcast that explores the unknown and the unexplained. Every week, we explore encounters with the paranormal, the bizarre, and the unbelievable. Whether a skeptic or a believer, join us on this thrilling journey into the other side of reality.
Welcome, everyone, to Supernatural Limits, Episode 4. You're keeping it posted right here with Puni Moa and guysosmooth. For this episode's topic, we're going to be diving into haunting stories. All right, disclaimer. Everything expressed here on this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only. The views expressed belong to the speaker themselves and does not represent the WEFOBZ Enterprise brand. It's about that time, Miles. Halloween's nearby.
That's right, man. It's around the corner.
Yeah. I want to thank you once again for coming on board, bro. I know this stuff kind of makes me feel uncomfortable at times, but man, I need a partner to get me through.
Hey, bro. I'm here for the call, bro. You do the same with me, man.
Well, bro, man, we got off to a nice, as we were ending episode 3 there about ghosts, we started going into a bunch of stories you were dropping there, especially that one that you were talking about when you came to visit Hawaii, right?
Yep.
So I actually wanted to continue off of that. That's why we talk about haunting stories. Haunted stories, haunting. So I went and looked up what tunnel you were talking about.
What'd you find out?
Found a couple of tunnels. Like I said, this place has a couple of those spots around. And then Hawaii is made up of different islands. So it has a couple of things on these different islands. But this one's particular because you were on the main island. You were out here in Oahu, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So the one I found for you, I'm pretty sure is the haunted Kalihiuka and Wilson tunnel. That's probably the one that your relative was referring to. The Wilson tunnel. So this is a haunting story in of itself. WEFOBZ Nation, and we're gonna talk about it right here on this episode. Puni Moa, you want to know more? Of course you want to know more, right?
Of course, Zeus.
So this tunnel, there used to be these stones that were found near before the tunnel was ever built, because the tunnel was built to let a road run through certain parts of Hawaii on this island I'm out in, Oahu, out in the Kalihi area. And for those of you who know, if you know, you know. Anyhow, when they did construction on this thing, there was a sacred altar out there. Two pile of stones that formed a sacred altar to spirits. They call them guardian spirits of the lands or whatever. Guess what the construction workers did to that stuff?
They messed it up.
Understatement, man. They freaking blew it up.
What? Demolished it?
Yeah, so they blew the crap out of it. The explosion, because they were using dynamite to blow a tunnel, to dig a tunnel through the mountain. So this was coming off of the Mysteries of Hawaii website. Okay, the Mysteries of Hawaii guys, it's a group of 2 people, I think. I follow them now on Facebook. If y'all want to follow them, they're on Facebook. And man, they're like the second best tourist attraction for hauntings in the nation. That's pretty It's pretty dope stuff right there. Anyhow, they posted about it. Like I had to read about it. It was called kupua stones, or pohaku kupua, are stones that range in size from a pebble to a boulder that has either an odd shape or an odd feeling to it when someone with other than normal perception encounters it.
That's crazy, man.
These kinds of stones are said to be imbued with beings or shapeshifters whose duty it is to protect the area in which it is situated. So these stones were situated in this area where they were building the tunnel. And in the uplands of Kalihi, the gods Kane and Kanaloa, sounds familiar, right? To the especially Samoa. They journeyed along the coast of the island of Oahu until they came to Kalihi. For a long time, they had been looking up the hillsides and along the watercourses for Ava. Anyhow, it just goes on to say that they, for their Ava, the Ava is the kava drink. If people don't know what Ava is, it's kava drink. It's kava in Fiji and Ava in Samoa. So they said these gods wanted to drink that stuff. And in the Kalihi area, where the supposed tunnel was going to be built, they brought up a spring of water there so they could do their Ava. Fast forward, people always like, they placed, leis,
Yeah, I've seen
like
that.
flower leis and stuff, and
Mhm.
tea leaves. They placed it on these stones to honor those spirits and whatever, to ask for safe passage. Like, don't let anything happen to me when I walk through your lands and stuff like that. Well, in October 1953, this article states that those two stones were completely destroyed by bulldozers when construction workers first cleared the area approaching the tunnel site for the Likelikehighway to be built. And Hawaiians, they believe that the destruction of these stones would probably cause it caused hella bad things for Hawaii, man. So, long story short, bunch of people died, bunch of men died from that construction company. They were spending tons of money on trying to get that thing done because it always kept delaying. If any of you work construction and stuff like that, you know what happens when you have delays and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
it was just weird shit going on. Weird, supernatural. Like, some people didn't even want to say that at the time, but it was heavy, it was violent, it was fatal, and that's where your story is. So I was trying to figure out, where does your story come in with the lady, right? Because you talked about your relative was saying there's a lady there.
Yeah.
So I looked through it. I mean, it just talks about a lot of the construction that went on there and stuff, but there's another one that talks about yeah, I didn't. Okay, the closest I came to finding about a lady there is the Likelikehighway here in Hawaii. It's named after Princess Miriam Likelike. She was the sister of King Kalakaua and Queen Liliuokalani, Hawaii's last reigning monarchs. And maybe that's what they're talking about. Yeah.
Probably. I don't know. I gotta follow up with that. I got caught up, so I need to hit up my
Yeah.
cousin and get back to you on that part.
Because there was another one, bro. They had another one here where they're like, the goddess Pele. You ever heard of that goddess Pele of the volcano from Hawaii?
No, I'm not familiar with Hawaii's culture.
So Hawaii has this goddess they call Pele. She's like the goddess of volcanoes. And she had a thing against, so on one of these islands, or I think it's this current island, I might be wrong, I gotta re-look up these notes. She had she was angry against another demigod or another god, which was a pig-faced god. And the funniest thing is, if you go down this road, it says they always tell you not to take spam or pork or anything pork through this road because you will never. Oh, it's the Kalihiuka. Kalihiuka. Those of you in Hawaii who know, Kalihiuka. So it was the pig god's name is Kamapua'a, a demigod. Pele was angry at this guy or this demigod, and she said, "You will never come into my territory," which is on the Kalihiuka. Those of you who live out here always know that highway. And they say there's this one spot. Legend says that if someone tries to bring pork across the Kalihiuka, their car will randomly stop and they will meet with an old woman with a dog sent by Pele to maintain the ancient arrangement. In order to cross the highway, they have to feed the pork to the dog. The pork is a symbol of Kamapua'a and cannot be taken from one side of the island to the other. Crazy, right? Like you can't take.
That's crazy.
So it's haunting stories like that that really catch my attention. It's kind of why I wanted us to get on this Supernatural Limits podcast, bro. I mean, it's falling right in line. I love Halloween when it comes around. Love listening to these ancient ones, man. But that's Hawaii. I mean, you got me searching freaking haunting stories out here in Hawaii, man. What the hell? What about out there in North Carolina, right?
I haven't heard anything out here. With
Yeah.
haunted stuff. It's more of like island,
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't get a lot of that stuff out here. Unless the one that I don't know of. But I have not heard of anything.
Well, these stories from Hawaii sound like the stories from back home in American Samoa, bro. But then the ones back home in American Samoa, I just find they're even more freaking violent and deadlier. Let me tell you one. There's one from my village. Okay, so I live my mom's village out in Afao. So, but it wasn't Afao. There's another village right over it called Ataloma. Anyways,
What about that one?
what was that?
What about it? The Ataloma one.
So this was a ghost story that my older cousins used to tell. Haunting story about up there. So this village that I come from, my mom's village, is known for like very, very creepy supernatural stuff happening. It's kind of why I've been influenced that much, it really influenced and affected the way I grew up and listening to these stories and like people are telling them like it's an everyday thing. You ever been in that kind of situation?
No.
Where people are talking about stuff that is so magical and so freaking out of this world, but they're talking about it like it's every day for them, like it's life. Come on, man! Don't you guys from the kingdom always do that?
They always talk about it, but that was in my young age, talk stories and stuff. We'll talk about giants.
See,
there's always like different kind of stuff.
Oh man, we definitely got to get into that soon. Anyhow,
Yeah.
All supernatural in this giant talk. But let's bring it back to the haunting stories. I'm titling this haunting story. So there's this road that goes up to this place alongside the village that I used to live in, where my mom's from. And then they said they used to, back in the old days, they used to live this couple there. The guy was a fisherman. And they lived next to a guava tree. You ever ate guava? You know guavas,
Yep.
right? Those things are bomb. Yeah, they had a huge guava tree there. And it was said that the village was like the roaming grounds for this one entity, this one super powered entity on the island. He was a man. Okay. the king god or something like that. His story was, he has his own story too. Anyhow, this couple, the man would always go down to the beach and he would always go fishing. His fishing was their way of life, how they made a living. So he'd catch fish and take it back home. So one of these days, so usually you're supposed to stop fishing at around the time that they call the sa.
Yeah.
You're supposed to
In the
stop.
evening time. Yep.
Yeah, when it curfew. Actually, Samoa had curfew. We still to the day have curfews, which to each their own, but curfew is a moment of like when people go back and do their praying and stuff. Sometimes I want to ask if curfew existed before the religious stuff. Maybe it did, because the story has. Anyhow, this guy was fishing and it came time for curfew. But then the guy was catching like a buttload of fish. Like he was, if you've been a fisherman, like, and you fish to eat, like eat the fish. Have you ever fished before, bro? Like
me personally, no.
Yeah, my dad's a true born fisherman. Like they love to catch fish, and when they're having their hot days, it's like basketball. You always want to shoot the ball and make it in the hoop, and when it keeps going in the hoop, you just want to keep doing it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So that's what this guy was doing. Like he was hot. He was catching all this fish. And curfew came by, and curfew came and went, and he was still catching all this fish. So I guess there was a voice in the atmosphere or in the air telling them, "You need to go home." But the guy, it told him 3 times. There's always got to be something about the number 3 in ghost haunting stories. That's what I believe. Anyhow, told him 3 times, and on the 3rd time, he finally went. Right? So he goes home, takes all his bunches of fish, takes it to his wife, tells his wife he had a very good haul. I guess the wife was like, the way my cousins put it is, the wife said, it's late. You should have not stayed out that long. Because, you got to keep with the rules, the unwritten rules of the land back in those old days. Anyhow, the guy said, I'm going to go shower. I'm going to go wash the salt water off of me. So he goes, and then the wife starts cooking some of the fish, and the guy calls for his towel, right? Remember that guava tree I told you that's by the couple, like the couple lived by this huge guava tree I told you about?
Yeah.
So as the wife walks out with the towel, something gets flung onto her. It covers her and drapes her, and she thought it was the guy throwing his clothes at her. You throw your wife your clothes.
Right. Yeah. I'm getting where you're going at with it.
So she picks it up, but then it feels a little weird, and she looks at it. It's the skin of her husband.
What?
And
what happened to the husband?
Well, the way my cousins put in, he got skinned alive. The spirit that runs the curfew of my mom's village skinned that guy alive. Basically left him to bleed out in pain and die. And I think the wife got the same treatment because the ending of the story goes, both their skins were found on top of that guava tree.
That's crazy.
That guava tree to the day exists in my mom's village.
That's crazy.
It's still there. I've seen it. I've been by it. It has a different vibe to it. Like it's that vibe where something went down, something dark, something. There's even like more haunting stories about that tree in general too. Like we have like this, even by that tree, there's like a rock that has 2 of the guavas from that tree. we had this one guy from the village. I wasn't born there, but it was a lot of my family members my older uncles and aunties, they say it was real because one of the village chiefs went up there and he ate the freaking guava from where it was put on those stones, kind of like how that Hawaii story I told you about the sacred stones.
Yeah.
So there was an altar up there and it had 2 guavas on it. So this dude, chief, went up there and he ate one of the guavas. Next thing you know, he's found in the ocean. He's found in the deepest part of the ocean where we call him Moa. And then one of my uncles had to go out there and drag his ass in. And they say while they try to pull him out of the water, he felt as heavy as a stone. What they say happened is he got slapped all the way into the ocean, which was you could say about a mile away.
Crazy bud.
Bro, I have some family members that testify, like they like they said, yeah, that happened. I know that a guy, like the old man, the old chief that they were talking about, like I never did get a chance to go talk to him about the story, but everybody in the village treated it like, yeah, it happened.
Yeah, like it happened, so what? Move on. Damn.
Bro, right? I guess it's because, we're getting raised in this Western style influence when we look back at the supernatural stuff. But then that was our world as indigenous people, like growing up in that state. Well, that was my world. That was my world, dude. Like I was so intrigued by that.
It's like what's his name? Rastaman, talk normal, like, oh, that's normal. It's like almost like it's part of the culture. Bro. It's actually part of the culture, it's norm.
And Rastaman was talking ghost stories and haunting stories. I got haunting stories for days, bro.
That's crazy.
From when I was growing up, dude, like, man, there was, I think that some of the people can attest to it. There was this haunting story in the elementary I went to, in American Samoa, Midkiff Elementary. A little girl got possessed out there. Like, I was playing out in the field at the time when it all went down. I was, before school starts, they let you have this little recess. I think I was in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. Was I in 5th grade? No, 3rd grade. I can't remember which exactly.
He was in elementary.
I was young, but we were playing out in the, out in the open. And then when the bell rings, then you go to class, to your building. Mind you, all the buildings are like separate buildings that look like traditional Samoan huts, but they're built more with brick and mortar kind of thing, right? More updated, more modern. If you know about Leon and Midkiff Elementary out in American Samoa, you know what I'm talking about. Anyhow, I'm playing out there, and then we hear this, me and my friends, we hear this screaming, like otherworldly screaming, bro. Like, that's why I always believe whoever does scary movies, the scary movies, those movies of possession and stuff like that, they always get it right. Because the voice that you hear is not one voice. You hear like a whole, it's like a harmony of voices, like the stuff you hear on like you watch on scary movies. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's like they always know. I mean, it feels like they do their homework, which is a good thing.
Yeah, so I heard that shit. It was loud, bro. And it was like so I ran with a couple of my friends and like, what the hell's going on? Well, I didn't know what the hell. I said, well, what is it? We're all like little knuckleheads and stuff. So we look inside the freaking one of the classrooms. There's this little girl. She's being held down by a couple of kids. She's smaller than all of them.
And they can't even contain her. Yeah. Those are kind of
only that, she took one arm and she flung 3 of them like 5 feet away. Like she just, like Superman them, flung them.
How would you know it's 5 feet away? She was in elementary.
Bro, if I compare it, like if I'm exaggerating, I'm exaggerating. But she flung those 3 kids with
Yeah,
one
she
arm.
pretty much flew. Yeah, you're right.
She flew, she Superman them, bro. Like, that's how I said it back then. Like, oh, she's Superman. Bro, I couldn't compute what I was seeing, bro. I ran, man. We had the other people. We just ran, dude. We just,
Dude, I remember something like that, similar to in elementary. It was just a crowd of people around. It was a girl too. For some reason, it's always a girl.
bro.
You know?
Well, there's a saying, there's a thing that says women are more susceptible to supernatural energies than men are. They're more connected in that sense because they represent giving life and giving life to new stuff. I don't know. It's just, but yeah, go on. Don't mind me. I'm on a tangent.
No, I'm just saying. It's like, why do you think these spirits, ghosts, chooses women? You know what I mean? Could it be like why? You get what I'm saying? Like, could it be women are more curious or aware, or test the waters? I guess.
Well, I think the other thing is that if it was a guy, the guy you wouldn't know it was a guy because guys, what it goes back to Queen's mental health thing. Guys like to repress all their anger and stuff.
Yeah.
Remember, come on, you watched like The Shining and all those other freaking stories where like you don't even know the guy went crazy, but he went crazy due to a possible possession or something like that.
Okay. We in other words, yeah, we don't.
Yeah, you wouldn't know it was a guy that got it because
you would never know it's a guy.
You would never know, which is even more freaking scary, right? Because man, murderers, like serial killers.
I was just thinking about that. Could it be
serial killers?
Serial killers, are they really serial killers, or they've been possessed? Because it feels like that's what the case is with them.
Well, some of them will say that they were, and a lot of them will say that they weren't. But man, is possession even real? What I say is, yeah, it's fucking real. It's real. What was that saying? The best job of the devil was making people believe he never existed. You ever heard that?
I didn't hear that saying, but that's pretty right on point, though.
Yeah, I've heard it a lot. Well, because just dealing in the supernatural stuff, studying up on it, using it as a hobby, making a career out of it in filmmaking with me. I've heard it up.
You say you do studies on this?
Dude, it's like a hobby of mine, bro. Anytime I can get my hands on something that talks about, so it's not just the supernatural that I'm interested in the beginning of the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like how it all started. So would you say that you're more leaning towards science versus religion, or is it kind of like just you form your opinion, you do your studies, and you're just.
Well, I like the scientific approach to it. I want to have science as a ground basis to try to explain what's going on. But man, you come across there's some stuff that science isn't even. I would say science. It's not science can't explain it yet. It's just science hasn't caught up to that point yet. Does that make sense?
I mean, according to your research, have you, anything stand out, or were you able to, have some conclusions on stuff?
The world is more connected than what people understand, bro. Like the origin of the world, if you're a hardcore Bible thumper, like without the blinds, you would understand the origin history of what it says in the Bible. Like everyone was all connected and they spoke a single language. You remember that story, the Tower of Babel?
Yeah.
I always come back to that story. Like everybody could communicate with each other until they got too ahead of themselves for building this tower all the way up to the sky, that God struck the tower and when everybody fell out of the tower, they started talking to each other. They couldn't understand each other because they were speaking different languages. That to me is like it's like saying, man, something happened to the world that people just broke apart. And see, that's what I was into. That's what got me into the supernatural, because you can't get to the history of I believe you cannot get to the origin of people and the world without touching on the freaking supernatural side.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I just never, had any interest in it. Probably because just the being the fear of it, or just not interested in it. You know what I'm
Well, let
saying?
me ask you this, bro. What gave you the fear? What put that fear in you? It
Well,
was
I
it
don't
was
even
how
know
you
if
were.
I don't know if it's even fear. That's what I'm saying. Like I just was not into it.
Hey, I know what you mean, bro. But um, I still want to thank you regardless for always coming on and stepping out of your comfort zone to try to talk to me about this stuff that I'm interested in. And especially
Hey,
some of the WEFOBZ Nation nutcracks out there who's probably interested in this stuff too. Like, yeah, man, haunting stories, bro. Haunting stories for days, man. Um, because of you, I was looking up that group, Why Mysteries, and there's a bunch of the stories out here. Very intriguing stories, man. It comes back to, man, like we were talking about in that previous episode, ghosts, unfinished business, right? These hauntings, probably part of an unfinished story. Ghosts that have an unfinished story. Man.
I think you also need to let the listeners know uh, your part in bringing the ghost hunters out there in Samoa.
And
Because I
I
mean
guess
that's
that's a story that I think everybody you all gonna need to come ask me personally.
that's intriguing, bro. Like
That was it was, for me it was something, another form of entertainment to try to bring out. But again, it connected back to why I was so freaking interested in the supernatural, because I was raised up brought up around it. Like it just kept eating at me, like, why is nobody putting a movie about this out? You know what I mean?
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
Like
people weren't even in tune too.
they don't, and it back then it was a little early for its time. It still may be, some people still may have that big bad juju on talking about these types of things. Once again, we don't look to try to offend anybody in any way. It is not our intention. Um,
Just
but
speaking of curiosity, man.
yeah, yeah, it's
I,
curiosity. We're trying to scratch this curiosity.
I think that's why it has nothing to do. I'm not trying to come across of trying to compare, but I always tend to think like that's why a lot of these Caucasians folks are able to experience stuff that a lot of us nationalities are not. I think they're the curiosity in them. You know what I'm saying? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Africans and also Asians does the same. It's just from my own visual eyes and just my experiences. I learn a lot of things from the white folks. You know what I'm saying? Because they're the one that goes out there, do the research. They're the ones that go out there and just willing to put their life on the line,
I think I would alluded to, man, I'm going to dive a little deeper into that. It would be mostly culture.
It's a culture thing, right?
Because I wouldn't say just Caucasian, it's just the culture of like Western culture. They don't dive too much. It's very brand new, right? US was just made, very brand new. But then you look at cultures like our old cultures that have these this background history, this ancient history. Our ancestors taught us what to beware of, right?
Mm-hmm.
Coming forward. Then you look at American culture, they weren't given that type of warning. Does that make sense? They weren't given like, man, don't do that or you're gonna anger that spirit or whatever. Which is probably why the Americans have this sense of fearlessness. Does that kind of
Well,
that's
yeah, I mean, our country changed the game. Its own, it formed its own.
it's the fearlessness and the
Yeah,
freedom to do whatever, right?
yeah. It broke a lot of rules, you know.
Yeah, but those rules were set there by these. So these ancient cultures had their rules set in place.
Mm-hmm.
For back then in those times, those rules were very crucial because it helped the culture survive. It helped the people survive, actually. But now that
And
times are changing, then you have this newer culture, which is the American culture. You see how I'm trying to combine science into this stupid shit? Anyhow, the American culture comes along, and I believe the American culture is a young one. They don't have the same wisdom that our cultures had before in terms of this supernatural stuff. So they're fearless and they have the freedom to go and explore it however much they want to.
the curiosity, yeah.
And that's what drives that. Oh man, thank you. Yeah, that was a nice delving into that topic. You have anything more to add on that subject matter for haunting stories? Did you like what we were talking about for this episode?
Mutual, mutual feelings. You know what I mean? It's not my thing, but it is interesting too.
Yeah.
I just don't like to soak on it because it'll freak me out. You know what I mean?
Well, I hope I didn't freak you out too much before Halloween, bro.
Nah, no. It's just it's one of the things, man. It's to me, can you say that these supernatural thing too? It's kind of like when it comes to gods, like in the Greek world, right? The Greek gods, their whole thing. Well, I believe any gods. That this is my own opinion. The only way they are in existence is when us human beings acknowledge them. You know, you see movies and stuff like that about it. They lose their power when we no longer worship whoever God that you're worshiping. Saying that I'm using that same mentality when it comes to evil spirits and ghosts and stuff like that. I choose not to believe in it, which then it makes me just carry on with my life. Kind of like Christmas, Santa Claus. You get what I'm saying? It's like if you don't
Yeah.
believe it, you move on with it, it'll leave you alone. But if you're one of those that like just continue on going into it, then yeah, it'll freak you out. Or you know, it kind of trumps my argument because people like you that enjoys to go research it and stuff like that. I mean, that's I guess just trying to learn it. It's probably a different thing than being afraid of it. If that makes any sense.
Well,
But
bro,
I'm definitely going to look that up, hit up my cousin, and I will report back next week exactly which ghost we're talking that I was referring to.
thank you. So, well, it's always a pleasure having you on WEFOBZ Nation. What do you think? Heard any good haunting stories lately? Share them in the comments. Like, subscribe, click that notification bell. We're here, Supernatural Limits. This has been episode 4. You had Puni Moa, and you had guysosmooth. We got